I thought I was saved. A house meant people. People meant help. But then my gut twisted, hard and mean, the way it does when you walk into a room and someone's been talking about you. I slowed the Chevy, gravel crunching under the tires. The swing on the porch moved lazily, creaking, though there was no wind. The front door stood wide open, spilling that golden light into the yard. A figure was there. At least, I thought it was. Tall, too tall, with shoulders that seemed to slope unnaturally downward. It didn't step out onto the porch. It just bent a little, as if trying to duck low enough to watch me from the doorway. My foot hit the gas before my brain caught up. The Chevy roared past the clearing, tires spitting dirt. The glow of that farmhouse faded in the mirrors, swallowed by trees, but I swear I saw the swing still moving long after it should have stopped. The dirt road narrowed, became more like a trail than something meant for cars. Still, I kept going, desperate to put distance between me and that house. Branches clawed the hood. Rocks hammered the undercarriage. My hands hurt from gripping the wheel so tight. Then, suddenly, the trees fell away again. I burst out onto asphalt. Relief punched through me, until I looked left, then right. It was Highway 281. Same cracked pavement. Same leaning billboard. Same black stretch disappearing forever in both directions. Somehow, I'd come full circle. The dirt road had spat me back out onto the very place I was trying to escape. My chest tightened. The realization landed like a stone. There was no leaving. The road was a maze designed to keep me in. Side paths didn't matter. Detours didn't matter. Everything fed back to 281, like spokes on a wheel. I slammed the steering wheel with both hands, shouting wordless rage at the windshield. My voice sounded small, swallowed by the night. For a moment I considered just killing the engine, stepping out, walking into the trees. But that thought died as quick as it came. I'd seen what waited in the diner. I'd seen the thing in the farmhouse doorway. The trees weren't safe either. Nothing was. So I drove on. The gas gauge hovered just above half, and I kept thinking about what would happen when it dipped to empty. When the Chevy died out here and the dark pressed in. The thought gnawed at me until I caught myself muttering prayers under my breath, prayers I hadn't said since I was a kid. That's when I noticed the figures. Not one, not two, dozens. On the roadside. Men. Women. Some children. All standing perfectly still among the trees, lined up like fence posts. Their faces pale in the sweep of my headlights, eyes black pits. They didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just watched. And every time I passed a new group, I realized with mounting terror they weren't strangers. They were people I knew. Old classmates. My aunt who died of cancer. Kenny, too. Kenny among them now, his grin wide and wrong, lips whispering soundlessly as the trees blurred past. At first, I thought maybe the exhaustion was playing tricks on me. Highway hypnosis, that's what they call it, right? You drive too long, too far, the monotony drills into your skull until your brain starts inventing things just to keep itself entertained. That explanation sounded good, logical. Except logic don't mean a damn thing when you recognize the faces staring out from the mesquite. I saw my 10th grade math teacher, Mrs. Collins, hair in the same messy bun she wore every day in class. Only her eyes were sunken holes, empty but hungry, and her lips curled up as if she knew something about me she shouldn't. I saw my cousin Bobby, who drowned in Possum Kingdom Lake back in '92. He stood barefoot, shirt plastered to his chest, water dripping off him like he'd just crawled out from under the blacktop. There was Mr. Gaines, too, the gas station owner from the little town where I grew up. He died of a heart attack when I was 15. Now here he was, standing shoulder to shoulder with the rest, staring at me like I owed him something. The Chevy rattled as I pressed harder on the gas, but no matter how fast I drove, the figures kept appearing. Every 100 yards or so, another group by the tree lean, waiting, watching. Their faces grew more personal, more cutting, like the road itself was digging through my memories and stitching them into these things just to rattle me apart. And it was working. I couldn't stop looking. Each face I passed felt like a hook snagging deep inside my chest. My mom showed up next, alive and well back in Dallas, but here she was too, pale and expressionless, eyes hollowed out like candle stubs. Then my little league coach, then an old girlfriend, then kids from my neighborhood long since moved away. They all stood in that same crooked stillness, heads just slightly tilted, as though they were listening to some tune I couldn't hear. At one point, I slammed the brakes and leaned out the window, screaming at them, demanding to know what the hell they wanted. My voice echoed back at me, swallowed in the night. None of them moved, but all at once, every figure I could see tilted their heads the other way. A slow, perfect unison, like puppets on the same string. My stomach turned to ice. I yanked myself back inside the truck, stomped the gas, and didn't look again for a long while. But here's the thing. You can try not to look, but eventually your eyes betray you. They sneak back to the glass, searching, checking. And when mine did, I realized the groups were getting closer. They weren't just in the trees anymore. They were inching toward the shoulder, toward the asphalt. By the time I'd driven another few miles, some of them were standing right at the edge of the road, so close the Chevy's headlights painted them bone-white as I flew past. I half expected one to step out, to reach through the window, to grab me and yank me out into the dark. I kept thinking, what if the road never ends? What if this is it, forever? Me driving, them watching, gas needle sinking lower every mile until finally, the idea almost broke me. My hands were trembling so badly I could hardly hold the wheel. My tongue felt thick, my mouth dry as sandpaper. I was drowning in panic when something shifted. A sound cut through the static hiss that had been lingering in the speakers all night. A voice, raspy, low, like it was bubbling up from waterlogged lungs. Not coming from outside, not from the trees or the figures. From inside the truck. It said my name. Just my name. Drawn out, cracked, familiar. Kyle. The Chevy lurched, swerving onto the shoulder before I could drag it back. Gravel pinged the undercarriage. My chest clenched, breath burning in my throat. That voice, God help me, I recognized it. It was Kenny. The sound of his voice froze every nerve in my body. Kenny. My best friend, my partner in trouble, the guy who was supposed to be sitting in the passenger seat beside me that night. Except Kenny had been dead for 6 years, buried in a cemetery in Waco after his lungs filled with blood on a road not far from here. Yet the voice that whispered my name came from no more than 3 feet away, just over my right shoulder, like he was leaning close enough for me to smell the Marlboro Reds he used to chain smoke. That I didn't want to look. God, I didn't. But fear has a way of forcing you to do the very thing you swear you won't. Slowly, like my neck was rusted shut, I turned my head. The passenger seat was empty. For a moment, relief washed over me. Empty, thank Christ, just empty leather cracked from too many Texas summers. But then, the air beside me shifted. That's the only way I can describe it. Like the seat itself sighed, like something unseen had just settled into it. The belt across the passenger side tightened against its latch, indenting the cushion beneath it, and a weight pressed down that hadn't been there a second before. My heart skittered against my ribs. Been a while, man, Kenny's voice rasped, calm, casual, like we were catching up over beers. It slithered straight from the empty space beside me, no lips, no body, just sound wearing his tone like a mask. That I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles bled white. You're not here, I whispered, every word cracking like dry wood. You're not here, Kenny. The laugh that followed was hollow, wet, a laugh that gurgled like something broken in the lungs. You think the road lets you go that easy? The voice asked. You think leaving me behind meant you got away? The temperature inside the Chevy dropped, sweat cooling into ice on my skin. The windshield fogged, not from heat but from something colder, older, seeping out of nowhere. The rearview mirror blurred with condensation, and in that haze, a shape began to form. Just behind me, sitting in the back seat, that I saw his outline first. Broad shoulders slouched forward, head tilted, hair hanging in stringy clump. Then the details bled in through the fog. Kenny's face, pale as chalk, eyes black and bottomless. His shirt was soaked, the fabric clinging to his chest, as if he'd crawled out of a river only moments ago. He raised his head, and for one sickening second he smiled. "You left me," he said. The voice now came from both the empty seat and the backseat figure, overlapping, out of sync, doubling in my ears until I wanted to claw them shut. "You left me to drown in the dark." My foot slammed the accelerator, the Chevy roaring down the highway like the devil himself was pushing it. The speedometer needle climbed, 80, 90, past 100, the truck rattling like it would tear itself apart. But the reflection didn't disappear. Kenny stayed there, sitting calm as death, watching me run from something I couldn't outpace. "I tried to pull you out," I screamed, though the words caught in my throat. "The water! Christ, Kenny, I tried." "You slipped." The figure in the mirror tilted his head, water dripping off his chin, running down his neck. "Slipped," he repeated, his voice splitting, cracking like glass under heat. "No. You let go." My chest heaved. Breath came in ragged bursts. I wanted to deny it, to scream until the truth drowned, but deep inside, buried beneath 6 years of silence, I knew he wasn't wrong. I had let go, the rear view flickered. For a blink, Kenny's black eyes locked on mine through the glass, and it felt like the mirror itself pulled me forward, drawing me into him, into the black, into whatever place the road wanted to send me. Then the headlights cut out, everything went black, the rear view flickered. For a blink, Kenny's black eyes locked on mine through the glass, and it felt like the mirror itself pulled me forward, drawing me into him, into the black, into whatever place the road wanted to send me. Then the headlights cut out, everything went black. For a moment, maybe a second, maybe an hour, I thought I had died. There was no engine noise, no tires on asphalt, not even the rattle of breath in my chest. Just silence, the kind that presses on your skull until you start to believe it isn't silence at all but some deeper sound, too vast for human ears. I tried to scream Kenny's name, but my throat was locked tight, as if the road itself had reached into me and clamped it shut. Then, slowly, light came back, not the harsh glare of halogen beams, but a sickly phosphorescent glow rising from the pavement itself. It pulsed under the car like veins, running in every direction, stretching into the dark as far as I could see. And there, half seen in the glow, were shapes. Not cars. Not animals. Shapes that moved like liquid shadows, crawling over one another, faceless, boneless, endless. Kenny was laughing. Low, guttural, like a sound chewed up and spat through a busted speaker. "You see it now," he whispered, though his lips never moved. His voice came from everywhere, from the dashboard, from the tires, from the bones inside my skull. "You see what the road really is." I don't remember how long it lasted. Maybe a lifetime. Maybe just another blink. All I know is when the headlights finally snapped back on, we were still moving, still on Highway 281, the world normal again. The glow was gone. The shapes were gone. Kenny was in the passenger seat, staring ahead, quiet as stone. I should have pulled over. I should have run into the dark, taken my chances with the coyotes, anything but what I did. I kept driving, because I knew, deep down, that the moment I stopped, the road would stop pretending. And it hasn't left me since. 20 years later, I still dream of that glow under the pavement. I wake with my sheets soaked in sweat, sometimes with dirt under my fingernails, as if I've been crawling along some other highway in the night. I've moved from city to city, tried to bury myself in crowds, but it doesn't matter. The road always finds me. In the reflection of a bus window. In the hum of an overpass. In the way streetlights flicker when I pass beneath them. As for Kenny, I never saw him again. But sometimes, late at night, when I check the mirror, I swear I see his eyes staring back at me. Black, bottomless, patient. Waiting, and I know that one of these nights, when the headlights cut out for the last time, I won't make it back. The road will take me where it's been trying to take me all along, and if you're unlucky enough to be out there after midnight, on 281, or I-35, or some nameless farm road, maybe you'll see me. A car drifting ahead of you, taillights glowing faint and red, pulling you deeper into the dark. Don't follow. For God's sake, don't follow, because the road remembers. And it's still hungry. Road Trip Stories from Texas Part 2. The Chevy's engine sounded wrong without Kenny in the driver's seat. It rattled, wheezed, stuttered like always, but now there was something hollow in it, like a voice calling out in a language I couldn't understand. I slid behind the wheel, my hands shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. It was already running, though. That was the first thing that made no sense. We'd shut it off when we got out at the diner. I remembered that clearly. But when I staggered back into the gravel lot alone, gasping for air, the headlights were burning, the dash was lit, the old cassette player was hissing static. As if it had been waiting for me. As if it knew I'd come back alone. I slammed the door and locked it, though I knew damn well a lock wouldn't stop the thing that had taken Kenny. The driver's seat smelled like him. Cheap cologne, Marlboros, sweat. For a second, I let myself believe he was still there, that I'd turn my head and see him grinning, ready to call me a coward for bolting. But when I looked, the seat was empty. The weight of that emptiness crushed me, pressed down on my chest until I could hardly breathe. Kenny was gone. Just gone. Like the diner had swallowed him up and erased itself to hide the evidence. I should have driven straight back to Dallas, called the cops, told them everything. But even as I thought it, some cold certainty wormed its way into me. They wouldn't believe me. Hell, I barely believed me. How do you explain a building that disappears? Figures made of paper skin? A man whose face splits open like a rotten fruit? No, if I went back, they'd put me in a padded room. Kenny would still be gone, and I'd be gone too, in a different way. So I drove. Highway 281 stretched out in front of me, endless as before. The same dark trees leaned in, the same thick silence pressed against the glass. But something had shifted. The road didn't just feel empty now, it felt aware. Like it had turned its attention fully to me. My headlights barely seemed to cut the blackness, and every so often, I caught a flicker at the edge of the beam. A pale shoulder, a tangle of hair, a long grin vanishing back into the dark. My knuckles ached from gripping the wheel. The radio, which had been static when I got in, suddenly crackled. A voice came through, faint and warbling, like it was underwater. At first I thought it was some trucker channel bleeding through, but then I recognized it. Kenny. His voice, distorted but unmistakable, whispering my name. Ash, I nearly drove off the road. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Kenny! I croaked, my throat raw. The static swelled, then his voice again, louder, urgent. Don't stop. Don't. And then it cut out, replaced by a high-pitched whine that drilled into my skull until I had to smack the radio off with my fist. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. I drove faster. 80. 90. The Chevy's frame rattled like it would come apart, but I didn't care. I needed distance. Needed to put miles between me and that impossible diner. Only the miles didn't feel real. The odometer ticked up, but the scenery never changed. Same trees. Same slumped billboard riddled with bullet holes. Same smear of asphalt vanishing into black. I kept passing the same stretch again and again, as though the road had no intention of letting me leave. That's when I realized the truth, or at least part of it. Highway 281 wasn't just a road. It was a snare, a loop, a hunting ground. And now, with Kenny gone, I was the one it wanted. I thought maybe if I turned off, anywhere, some side road, a dirt track, even a driveway, I could break free of the loop. That's how I reasoned it, sitting there with my pulse jackhammering in my throat. If the highway wanted me, maybe the best move was to leave it, to cheat it. So the next time I saw a narrow cut through the brush, half hidden by mesquite and cedar, I jerked the wheel and sent the Chevy bouncing over the rut. The shocks squealed. Branches scraped both sides of the truck, fingernails on a coffin lid. For a moment, the headlights caught a sign riddled with buckshot. It leaned crooked, letters faded, but I made out enough. County Road 417. The dirt road snaked away from the highway like it didn't want to be followed. It wound through the trees, every curve tighter than the last. I thought I'd feel relief, but instead the air in the cab thickened, like the truck was sinking into something heavy and invisible. The radio was off, yet the speakers hissed faintly, like breath. Every hair on my arms prickled. About a mile in, the trees opened to a clearing, and I saw it, a house. Not abandoned, not collapsing like the gas stations and barns I'd passed earlier. This one stood proud, white paint clean, windows glowing warm yellow like a postcard dream of home. A 2-story farmhouse, complete with a porch swing and a flag fluttering in the night breeze. For half a second. Road trip stories from Texas. Part 1. Texas highways have a way of stretching out forever, like black ribbons unfurling beneath an indifferent sky. You can drive for hours and not see another car, only the occasional buzzard circling overhead or the husk of an old gas station collapsing into itself like a body left too long in the sun. People from out of state think the loneliness of these roads is romantic, wide open spaces, freedom, the whisper of cowboy legends lingering in the desert wind, but anyone who's lived here long enough knows better. They know that once the sun drops behind the horizon, those same wide-open spaces feel like an endless void waiting to swallow you whole. The dark out here isn't like the dark in cities. It's thicker, meaner, more alive. The shadows don't just fall across the land, they seem to reach for you, stretching long fingers over the hood of your car, slipping into the seams of your clothes, and there's the silence. God help you if you ever pull over out here, cut the engine, and just listen. At first you'll think it's quiet, peaceful even. No horns, no trains, no airplanes overhead. But the longer you stand in it, the more wrong it feels. The silence has a pulse to it, like the earth itself is holding its breath, waiting for something. Even the insects know better than to sing some nights, and that's when you realize silence can roar louder than any highway. That's when you start to feel eyes on you, eyes from the brush, eyes from the trees, eyes that don't blink. Truckers know about those eyes. They talk about them in low tones, half laughing to hide the tremor in their voices, calling them the Watchers. They say if you're unlucky, you'll catch one of them in your high beams, pale as bone, standing where no one should stand, waiting for you to blink first. I'd heard those stories for years and never believed them. My uncle used to drive a rig down I-35, and every Thanksgiving he'd tell one of his so-called true road stories after the football game ended. He'd talk about women in white dresses thumbing rides who vanished from the passenger seat before the next county line, or strange lights hovering over the desert that made his CB radio spit static like an angry wasp nest. As a kid, I thought he was just trying to scare me. As a teenager, I rolled my eyes and laughed. By 22, I thought I knew better. I thought I knew everything. I thought ghost stories were for children and drunks. That's why, in the August heat of 1999, when my best friend Kenny and I decided to drive from Dallas down to Laredo just for the hell of it, I didn't think twice about the warnings. We had a beat-up Chevy, $200 between us, and a box of cassette tapes that rattled in the glove compartment like old bones. It was supposed to be just another summer trip, the kind you look back on years later with a smile and say, man, we were young and stupid. I didn't know it would be the trip that kept me awake at night decades later, sweating in the dark, wishing I'd taken those old trucker stories a little more seriously. Because somewhere between Johnson City and Marble Falls, on Highway 281, under a sky that had gone strangely starless, we discovered the roads of Texas aren't empty at all. They're crowded with things that don't belong to this world. Things that were here long before asphalt and headlights, before Texas was Texas, maybe even before men walked the land at all. And once those things notice you, they don't let go. They wait for you, mile after mile, curve after curve, patient as death. We left Dallas late in the afternoon, the kind of August day where the air feels heavy enough to wring out of a towel. Kenny insisted on driving first, mostly because he didn't trust my lead foot, as he called it, but I think he just liked being behind the wheel. He had this way of gripping the steering wheel like it was alive, his knuckles pale, his lips pursed, as if he expected the car to bite back at any second. The Chevy wasn't much to look at. Primer gray doors, one headlight dimmer than the other, and an engine that rattled like an asthmatic trying to climb a hill, but it was ours, and at 22, that was enough. We stuffed the back seat with bags of beef jerky, gas station sodas, and a crumpled Texas map that neither of us could fold properly no matter how many times we tried. For the first 100 miles we laughed about everything. Girls we knew, bands we'd seen, stupid stories from high school. The car smelled of sweat and sunflower seeds, and the stereo spit out distorted guitar riffs from tapes that had been played one too many times. The sun bled out across the horizon in slow motion, the sky going from dusty gold to bruised purple, and by the time we passed through Johnson City, night had settled in with both feet. Out here, when night comes, it doesn't sneak up on you like it does in the suburbs. It drops like a curtain. 1 minute you're squinting against the glare of. Kenny noticed it too. "Didn't we pass that billboard already?" he muttered, his voice low and cracked. He pointed to a rusted old sign leaning off the shoulder, its paint so faded you could barely make out the outline of a cowboy boot. I wanted to argue, to say he was imagining it, but deep down I knew he wasn't wrong. I'd seen it 2, maybe 3, 4 times now. Same bullet holes punched through the metal, same tangle of weeds at its base. Highways all look the same, I lied. My words tasted sour in my mouth. Kenny glanced at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw real fear swimming in his eyes. Not panic. That had already burned off back when the thing pressed its face to the glass. This was deeper. A sinking, hopeless kind of fear, the kind that comes when you start to realize you're not getting out. He didn't say anything after that, just gripped the wheel tighter, the muscles in his arms straining. We drove on. 40 minutes, maybe an hour. The Chevy's fuel gauge dipped lower, the needle creeping toward the red. My chest tightened at the thought of being stranded, of running out of gas with that thing still out there. I leaned forward, searching desperately for a glow on the horizon, anything that suggested civilization. Finally, faint and distant, I saw it, a cluster of lights off to the right, maybe a half-mile down a side road. Relief rushed through me so strong I nearly cried. "There!" I shouted, pointing. "Turn off. Right there, see it?" Kenny nodded, his face pale with exhaustion. He spun the wheel, the Chevy's tires squealing as we left the highway for a cracked, narrow road. The lights grew clearer, yellow and flickering, strung along a low building that looked like a truck stop or diner. My throat loosened. People, food, coffee, safety. But as we rolled closer, something about the place set my teeth on edge. The lights weren't neon, they were lanterns, swaying faintly as though in some invisible breeze. The building wasn't a modern truck stop either. It looked older, sagging, like it hadn't been touched since the 1950s. A faded sign above the door swung back and forth on rusted chains, the letters worn down to ghost. And though the lights glowed warm, there were no cars in the lot. Not a single one. Just our Chevy pulling in, engine rattling like it was begging us to turn back. Kenny parked, his hands shaking on the wheel. Neither of us moved at first. We just sat there, staring at the building, the shadows it cast stretching impossibly long across the dirt lot. Finally, he whispered, "You think it's open?" I didn't answer, because deep down I already knew the truth. Places like that don't close. They wait. We sat there longer than we should have, the Chevy idling rough, headlights casting long shadows across the sagging building. The lanterns above the door flickered, their flames too steady for real fire, too dim for bulbs. They gave off just enough glow to show the door was slightly ajar, like it had been left open for us. Kenny killed the engine, and the silence came crashing back, thick and heavy, pressing against my ears until I thought they'd burst. It was worse than on the highway. Out there, the silence had been stretched wide across the land. Here it was condensed, focused, like standing at the bottom of a well with the air slowly running out. Neither of us wanted to be the first one to move. Finally, Kenny muttered, "Screw it," and shoved the door open. The creak of the hinges cut sharp against the night, too loud, as though the world itself had been waiting for a sound to fill the void. I followed him because I didn't want to be left alone in the car, not with whatever had been pressing against the rear window only an hour before. The ground crunched under our sneakers, the gravel lot oddly damp, though the air was dry and the sky hadn't seen rain in weeks. Up close, the diner looked even more wrong. The windows were coated in a film of grime, but through it I could just make out the outlines of booths, a counter, and, my breath caught, people. Figures sitting inside. Shapes in the booths, hunched and motionless, like they'd been waiting for something. My chest loosened a little at the sight. People. Maybe they were weird, maybe they were country, but people were better than being alone. Kenny must have felt the same, because he squared his shoulders and pushed through the door without hesitation. The bell above it gave a shrill ding that echoed unnaturally long, like a scream stretched thin. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of old grease and something sweeter underneath, rot, cloying and sticky in the throat. The light came from more lanterns, hung along the walls, their flames frozen in a way that made my stomach turn. They didn't flicker. Not once. Hello? Kenny called, his voice cracking. The figures in the booths didn't answer. They didn't move at all. I stepped closer, squinting. That's when I realized they weren't people. Not exactly. At first I thought it was the engine, but no, it was coming from outside. A steady, deliberate tap-tap-tap against the rear window. Kenny's eyes widened. Don't turn around, he whispered, but of course I did. The sound was unmistakable. Tap, tap, tap. Like fingernails on glass, slow and patient, as though whoever, or whatever, was back there had all the time in the world. Kenny's knuckles went white on the wheel, and I could hear his breath coming in short, ragged pulls. I told myself it had to be a branch, maybe a loose bit of gravel kicked up by the tires, but we weren't moving anymore. The car was parked dead still in the middle of Highway 281, and there were no trees close enough to touch us. Still, I clung to that flimsy explanation because the alternative was too heavy to carry. Then came another sound. A low scrape, like the edge of a nail dragging across paint, starting at the trunk and working its way slowly, deliberately, toward the passenger side. I could feel the vibration of it in my seat. Kenny muttered a prayer under his breath, one of those quick, jumbled ones you only remember from childhood, and I wanted to join him, but my throat felt sealed shut. All I could do was sit there, frozen, while that unseen hand traced the length of the Chevy, closer and closer to me. When the sound reached my door, I thought my heart would stop. The handle rattled, once, twice, like someone testing it. That finally broke my paralysis. I shouted, "Drive, Kenny! For God's sake, just drive!" He slammed the gearshift into drive, tires squealing as the Chevy leapt forward. Gravel spit from under the wheels, and the whole car shook like it was trying to shake something off its back. Kenny didn't let up on the gas until the speedometer crept past 80. The night blurred by, streaks of black and gray, but even at that speed, I swore I could still hear the tapping, faint and steady, as though whatever it was had latched onto us and wasn't letting go. Finally, Kenny glanced at the rearview mirror, and his scream tore through the car. I snapped my head around and wished I hadn't. There, pressed against the glass of the back window, was a face. Pale, lips split into a grin too wide for its skull, eyes black as oil slicks. Its hands, if you could call them that, were flattened against the glass, fingers long and thin, ending in sharp, cracked nails that scraped with every bump of the road. Its hair whipped wildly, though there was no wind inside the Chevy, and its skin seemed to shimmer faintly, as if it wasn't entirely solid. I turned back around, gagging, my stomach twisting. Kenny was crying now, tears streaking down his cheeks, his voice hoarse as he shouted, "It's not real, it's not real, it's not real." But the sound of claws screeching across the rear window told us otherwise. The glass bulged inward, just slightly, like something was pressing hard from the outside. I fumbled in the glove box, my hands shaking, looking for, I don't know, anything. A flashlight, a weapon, hell, even one of those damn cassette tapes. All I pulled out was a folded paper map, which trembled uselessly in my hands. Behind us, the face pressed harder, lips moving now, forming words I couldn't hear but somehow understood. "Let me in." Kenny swerved the Chevy hard, almost throwing us into the ditch. The force of it seemed to shake the thing loose, because when I dared a glance back, the window was empty again. Just our own wild-eyed reflections staring back at us. The silence returned, thick and waiting. Neither of us spoke for miles. The road stretched ahead, endless and black, the kind of road that feels like it doesn't lead anywhere at all. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't left it behind, that whatever had found us out there in the dark was still riding along, hidden just outside the reach of the headlights, waiting for its chance to come back. We kept driving because stopping wasn't an option anymore. Both of us knew it without saying it. If we killed the engine, if we let that heavy silence swallow us again, it would come back. Whatever it was. Maybe it was already back, running just out of sight on the shoulder, keeping pace with us. I didn't dare check. My eyes stayed glued to the strip of asphalt in front of the headlights, and I told myself if we just found a gas station, a diner, any place with lights and people, we'd be safe. That was the lie I clung to, the one thing keeping me from clawing at the door and tumbling out onto the road. The problem was, nothing came. Highway 281 wasn't exactly barren in the late 90s. There should have been the occasional truck, a roadside bar, one of those dingy motels with flickering neon signs. But mile after mile, the road gave us nothing. Just the same endless stretch of asphalt, the same leaning trees, the same suffocating dark. It started to feel like we weren't moving forward at all, like the road was spooling under us in a loop, feeding us the same scenery again and again. Sunset, and the next you're staring into a wall of black so thick you wonder if your headlights are even working. Kenny flicked them on high beam, but it didn't make much difference. The darkness ate the light like tar. The road ahead was nothing more than a gray vein vanishing into nowhere, lined with trees that seemed to lean closer with every mile. That's when I noticed it first. The quiet. Not the regular kind of night quiet, where you can still hear crickets or the whine of cicadas. This was different. It was as though the world had swallowed its own tongue. No chirps, no rustle of leaves, not even the hum of wind across the hood. Just the drone of the engine and the hiss of tires against asphalt. At first I didn't say anything, because Kenny had the radio cranked and was drumming the steering wheel to Metallica, but after a few miles I reached down and turned the volume knob. "Hey," I said. "Do you hear that?" "Hear what?" he asked, irritated, his fingers still tapping out a beat. "Nothing," I said. "That's the point. It's too damn quiet." Kenny rolled his eyes, the way he always did when he thought I was being dramatic. "You've been listening to your uncle's ghost stories again. Relax, man. It's Texas. Half the state is dead space. That's what makes it beautiful." But even as he said it, I could see the muscle in his jaw twitch. He felt it too. That silence. That heavy, waiting kind of silence, like the whole world had tilted its head toward us, listening. We drove another 10 miles without speaking. The road was empty. Not a single car coming the other way, not a pair of taillights in front of us. Just us, the Chevy, and the black ribbon unspooling beneath the tires. Then the headlights flickered. Just once, quick, like a light bulb about to burn out. Kenny swore and slapped the dash. "Piece of junk," he muttered. But the Chevy wasn't the problem. I knew it in my gut, the same way you know when someone's staring at you from across a room. The hair on my arms stood up, prickling in the stale air. Something out there had noticed us. Kenny didn't want to admit it, but after the headlights flickered, he eased off the gas. Just a little, just enough to let the speedometer drift down from 70 to 60, like maybe driving slower would keep whatever it was at bay. I didn't call him on it because my stomach had already tied itself into a knot. My uncle used to say when the road goes quiet, you need to pay attention. Not to the road itself, but to the things that aren't supposed to be there. "It'll be small at first," he'd mutter after his second beer. A shape you swear was a tree stump but wasn't there yesterday, a glimmer of white at the edge of your vision, a shadow crossing the lane when there's nothing to cast it. I used to laugh at him. Sitting there in that Chevy, staring down Highway 281, I wasn't laughing anymore. We drove like that for another stretch. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15, time moves funny when you're waiting for something bad to happen, and then Kenny suddenly slammed the brake. My seatbelt cut into my chest as the car jolted. Jesus Christ, what are you doing? I yelled, clutching the dashboard. Didn't you see it? His face had gone pale, sweat dripping down from his temple. See what? There. He pointed through the windshield, his hand shaking. I looked. The road ahead was empty. Just that long strip of gray and the suffocating dark pressing in from both sides. There's nothing there, man. Kenny swallowed hard. It was a girl, he said finally, voice raw. She just stepped out. Right in the middle of the damn road. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The Chevy idled, rattling like bones in a tin can. I wanted to tell him he was seeing things, that it was just the headlights playing tricks, but I remembered the way his hands had trembled on the wheel. Kenny wasn't the type to spook easy. He'd been in fights, he'd driven drunk, he'd slept in strangers' barns when we were kids. He wasn't scared of anything. And yet, right then, he was scared. I leaned forward, squinting into the black. My eyes burned from trying to force shapes out of nothing. And then, just for a heartbeat, I saw her too. A flash of pale white, thin shoulders hunched forward, long hair hanging over her face. She stood maybe 30 feet ahead, barefoot on the asphalt, her arms limp at her sides like a marionette with cut strings. My chest seized up, and before I could say anything, she was gone. Vanished. Not walked off, not turned around. Gone, like smoke blown away. Kenny cursed and threw the car into park. No, he said, shaking his head. No, I'm not. She was right there. You saw her, right? Tell me you saw her. Yeah, I admitted, my throat dry. I saw her. We sat in silence, the Chevy's engine grumbling low, both of us staring at the empty road. The night pressed in heavier than before, as if the darkness itself was listening to us breathe. Then, faint but sharp, came the sound of tapping. Road trip stories from Texas. Part 1. Texas highways have a way of stretching out forever, like black ribbons unfurling beneath an indifferent sky. You can drive for hours and not see another car, only the occasional buzzard circling overhead or the husk of an old gas station collapsing into itself like a body left too long in the sun. People from out of state think the loneliness of these roads is romantic, wide open spaces, freedom, the whisper of cowboy legends lingering in the desert wind, but anyone who's lived here long enough knows better. They know that once the sun drops behind the horizon, those same wide-open spaces feel like an endless void waiting to swallow you whole. The dark out here isn't like the dark in cities. It's thicker, meaner, more alive. The shadows don't just fall across the land, they seem to reach for you, stretching long fingers over the hood of your car, slipping into the seams of your clothes. And there's the silence. God help you if you ever pull over out here, cut the engine, and just listen. At first you'll think it's quiet, peaceful even. No horns, no trains, no airplanes overhead. But the longer you stand in it, the more wrong it feels. The silence has a pulse to it, like the earth itself is holding its breath, waiting for something. Even the insects know better than to sing some nights, and that's when you realize silence can roar louder than any highway. That's when you start to feel eyes on you, eyes from the brush, eyes from the trees, eyes that don't blink. Truckers know about those eyes. They talk about them in low tones, half laughing to hide the tremor in their voices, calling them the Watchers. They say if you're unlucky, you'll catch one of them in your high beams, pale as bone, standing where no one should stand, waiting for you to blink first. I'd heard those stories for years and never believed them. My uncle used to drive a rig down I-35, and every Thanksgiving he'd tell one of his so-called true road stories after the football game ended. He'd talk about women in white dresses thumbing rides who vanished from the passenger seat before the next county line, or strange lights hovering over the desert that made his CB radio spit static like an angry wasp nest. As a kid, I thought he was just trying to scare me. As a teenager, I rolled my eyes and laughed. By 22, I thought I knew better. I thought I knew everything. I thought ghost stories were for children and drunks. That's why, in the August heat of 1999, when my best friend Kenny and I decided to drive from Dallas down to Laredo just for the hell of it, I didn't think twice about the warnings. We had a beat-up Chevy, $200 between us, and a box of cassette tapes that rattled in the glove compartment like old bones. It was supposed to be just another summer trip, the kind you look back on years later with a smile and say, man, we were young and stupid. I didn't know it would be the trip that kept me awake at night decades later, sweating in the dark, wishing I'd taken those old trucker stories a little more seriously. Because somewhere between Johnson City and Marble Falls, on Highway 281, under a sky that had gone strangely starless, we discovered the roads of Texas aren't empty at all. They're crowded with things that don't belong to this world. Things that were here long before asphalt and headlights, before Texas was Texas, maybe even before men walked the land at all. And once those things notice you, they don't let go. They wait for you, mile after mile, curve after curve, patient as death. We left Dallas late in the afternoon, the kind of August day where the air feels heavy enough to wring out of a towel. Kenny insisted on driving first, mostly because he didn't trust my lead foot, as he called it, but I think he just liked being behind the wheel. He had this way of gripping the steering wheel like it was alive, his knuckles pale, his lips pursed, as if he expected the car to bite back at any second. The Chevy wasn't much to look at. Primer gray doors, one headlight dimmer than the other, and an engine that rattled like an asthmatic trying to climb a hill, but it was ours, and at 22, that was enough. We stuffed the back seat with bags of beef jerky, gas station sodas, and a crumpled Texas map that neither of us could fold properly no matter how many times we tried. For the first 100 miles we laughed about everything. Girls we knew, bands we'd seen, stupid stories from high school. The car smelled of sweat and sunflower seeds, and the stereo spit out distorted guitar riffs from tapes that had been played one too many times. The sun bled out across the horizon in slow motion, the sky going from dusty gold to bruised purple, and by the time we passed through Johnson City, night had settled in with both feet. Out here, when night comes, it doesn't sneak up on you like it does in the suburbs. It drops like a curtain. 1 minute you're squinting against the glare of